Hey all, I have a great episode coming up for you right now with a long-term colleague of mine, Mr. Richard Steele. It's a must listen to. It's really great around the principles and practices that truly help you create a culture of continuous improvement and innovation. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where we share knowledge from global experts and practitioners in how to embed excellence for sustainable results. How to create a culture of continuous improvement and innovation using best practices in operational excellence, customer experience and sales, leadership, strategy, people development, and environmental and social good.
I'm your host, Brad Jeavons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. Enhancing an organisation's ability to continuously improve and innovate at all levels creates amazing results, up to 10 times productivity improvement, customer and employee experience increases, as well as safer operations and reduced environmental impact. Unfortunately, most programs deployed to enhance the company's ability to improve and adapt failed to deliver. A select few have overcome this trend and truly embedded excellence. This show explores these organisations and steps you can take to improve yours. This show is proudly brought to you by the Enterprise Excellence Community and Group, which is focused on helping organisations embed excellence for sustainable results and a better future. Through the group, you can attend workshops focused on the most important topics to embed excellence. You can also get hold of free resources from the download section of the website, or reach out to one of our members for some advice and help. Visit enterpriseexcellencegroup.com.au to learn more. Welcome to episode 207 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. It is such a pleasure to have Mr. Richard Steele on the show with us today. Richard has had over 40 years working in the field of operational excellence, specialising in embedding excellence for sustainable results. Richard has a strong background in lean principles and also strategy and behaviour deployment and execution, which we're here today to discuss. Let's get into the episode. Richard, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Richard, mate, what is your backstory? And I know part of it because you've helped me through my career, but do you mind giving the listeners a bit of your backstory?
Yeah, I've been in New Zealand now for over 28 years, but originally from the UK, you may tell from the accent. And when I was in the UK, I had a bit of a start in my career with supply chain and logistics. So I worked for a company called TNT Express, obviously a good Australian company in those days. And I spent some time working for the Michelin Tire Company, which was very interesting, working with the French. And then I was very lucky to end up at a place called Unipart Jaguar. So it was the worldwide distribution center for Jaguar cars there in Coventry, the original home of Jaguar cars. And that company, Unipart, was very big on all things Japanese. We had a CEO at the time who was saying, look, guys, if we're not careful, in 20 years' time, everything's going to be being made in China. So obviously quite prophetic. And he wanted to embrace, the sort of Toyota way, and he actually hired or was working with Professor Dan Jones at the time to look to implement some of the sort of what we in those days called Kaizen in our operations. So the actual Jaguar distribution center was the original kind of kickoff for their kind of lean initiatives. And I was very lucky to be trained by Shingujitsu. So Shingujitsu were the retired executives from Toyota, so part of Taiichi Ohno's kind of much vaunted team. And we did plenty of stuff around Kaizen and Lean and implementing TPS in our operation, mostly in distribution and warehousing. And that's a couple of years that probably felt like 5 years, to be honest. There's a lot of work done, a lot of learning, and a lot of sort of mistakes made along the way.
It's such an opportunity, Richard. Like, what a grounding. And, even prior to that, being in the transportation industry and then the tire industry and then getting into the Jaguar side, did you come across Chris Butterworth while you were at Jaguar? Did you guys cross paths there?
Well, we never directly crossed paths at Jaguar. They would have been a supplier. But I'm sure some of you may know the story of lean thinking, but it was a case study of a number of different organizations. And there was an official book launch. And that book launch, I think there was probably several, but there was one in Oxford at the headquarters of Unipart. And Chris and I would have been in the same room. But there was probably 250 people in there, so I never actually met him. But I did meet another kind of colleague that you're aware of, Professor Peter Hines. So Peter Hines came to visit me when I was at Unipart Jaguar, and he was actually doing some background research that went into lean thinking. So I think it's page 251, but where I used to work is actually in the original lean thinking books. That's my big claim to fame. But yeah, I remember meeting, sorry, I didn't remember meeting Peter, but when I met him sort of 20 years later on, he said, "Oh yeah, I remember coming to see you once." And I was like, okay, pretended that I remembered. But yeah, so yeah, a few people that from that time I've kept in touch with as well. So quite the early days of lean, I think, in the UK.
Yeah, it's a small world, isn't it? Like just hearing those crossing paths between you guys and that melting pot that was going on there. And it's a credit to Jaguar that they did that because you look at where Jaguar's at and it's still producing over there in the UK. And it's a credit to the UK auto industry. They moved early and they're able to adapt.
Yeah, so actually it was not, it was Unipart managing on behalf of Jaguar. So
Ah,
Jaguar had little or nothing to do with it. But the context was Ford owned Jaguar in those days, and they could have easily taken over the distribution of the aftermarket spares and repairs. And this was a real focus to say, well, we need to retain this business. We need to demonstrate that we can improve and delight our customers. So I'm glad to say that they did retain the contract and they hold it to this day.
yeah, that's great. Great story. Great story. And it's a credit to the UK industry that they embraced these practices to really become, I guess, fitter. Because probably if they stayed the path they were on back when lean thinking first came out, they probably wouldn't be here right now. A lot of that infrastructure and what's still occurring there.
Yeah, and in the UK, obviously was a bit of I guess, a platform for the Japanese car industry because they had to make cars that were made within Europe back in the tariffs of those days. And I think they called it Japan's fifth island at one point, the UK. And prior to going to Jaguar, of course, I was in tires. And I was actually part of the team that originally set up the OE supply of Michelin tires into the Nissan plants up in the northeast of England. So that was 1991 that we were
Wow.
setting up just in time, literally rolling it off the production line onto trucks, and only having a day and a half worth of inventory sitting in the warehouse, then going onto the line. So yeah, that was big days. I remember being part of the setup for the Toyota factory at Burniston. So the UK has still retained a lot of that automotive kind of history, but it does make me cry when I see MGs driving around and they're made in China.
Yeah. Yeah. They've done well. Not 100% everything's retained, but a lot's retained, which is good. Richard, the key thing is with lean thinking, and I guess you learn a lot through the lean principles, through just in time, through flow, through all these techniques. But we're actually here today to talk about connecting frontline to strategy and culture. And why is it so important to do this, to connect the frontline to strategy and culture to actually help lean principles succeed and help you move forward in that regard?
Well, I guess it's a bit often it's a bit of a disconnect between the senior management who believe they've got a fantastic strategy and a fantastic plan, don't really sort of train or empower the middle management to implement these great ideas. Therefore, the kind of rank and file, the people that are the front line, they never really understand exactly what's expected of them. So, one thing I learned and a conversation I had with Yoshiki Iwata, who always had a translator when you were talking to him. He was from Shingijutsu. I asked him, like a dumb young person, where should I start doing improvement? Where should I start the Kaizen? And he looked at me, I think he may have swore at me in Japanese and said, well, look, obviously you start as close to the customer as possible. So if you can sort of, go along the lines of, well, actually, if you focus your improvements or focus your strategy and your front line actually can put it into context and they can actually have the right behaviors and do the right things and actually work on improving the experience for the customer. So those that are closest to the work, so the old Gemba philosophy, often are the people that can add the greatest value, not a consultant, and certainly not somebody in the senior leadership team. So it's those everyday kind of things that happen, and that then gives you what I call the culture of continuous improvement.
And you think about it, don't you, Richard? Like you win or lose at the front line and out with customers, and that's where strategy comes to life or strategy fails. But often there, in most companies, I'd say what I see, the front line aren't even connected to strategy, aren't even connected to. They might have even been nothing's in place. But I know I've come across you, mate, through your work you did at Countdown. And when I was helping Kraft Heinz there on their sales side. They were able to talk how Countdown had their plan at the front line for the year, and they were able to connect the Countdown's plan at the front line through the OGSM to help them in what they did. It was an amazing thing. So I knew you were a key person to get on this topic. Richard, like, why do you think, mate, and the companies like don't do this, don't connect their front line to strategy and really focus on starting improvement and strategic outcomes there?
I think it's possibly a lack of awareness of how much you have to do. And again, another kind of thought person that kind of shaped my sort of history in terms of improvement is a Japanese gentleman who was the Kaizen Institute's kind of founder. So Masaki Imai, unfortunately passed away. But he used to say, look, the first thing you have to do is communicate. The second thing you have to do is communicate, and the third thing you have to do is communicate. So it's really being reminding yourself that. And one of my stories is I went into a company once and I asked about what their strategy was. They didn't know, and I saw something on the wall in reception, which I call it words on the wall, something to do with some kind of a strategy. They said, oh, yeah, we had a workshop on that once. The lunch was really nice. I can't remember what else, So just doing like one workshop is not going to cut it. You really need to be constant. You need to be present. You need to, get amongst the people. The senior leadership needs to be out there reinforcing the behaviors, reinforcing why it's important. And I guess what the consequences are if we do it well, but also if we don't do so well, So you can't just leave it to the middle managers, which is what often happens, and they just struggle because they're trying to manage the operation as well as the conflicting demands of the senior leadership team.
Yeah, it's a constancy, isn't it? I guess that famous guy Jim Collins said it, that constancy of purpose, that constancy of connection to culture and strategy, isn't it? So, Richard, on this topic, that's so important and it's often overlooked because we often just go straight to the lean tools without even thinking about this system. How does an organization go about improving how they connect frontline to strategy constantly?
Well, I always believe in it's kind of keep it simple. So, if you're going to set goals, make it transferable to the workplace. So potentially, I won't name names, but maybe, you want to say, okay, we want to improve our sales, and maybe we want to reduce our losses, so on. Actually don't have it all finished and tell them prescriptive exactly what's expected. Open it up to people on the shop floor, get their input. And actually, I've seen this done really well, and actually people coming up with much better ideas and initiatives than, say, for instance, the senior leadership team. So a good old kind of go to Gemba, understand, and get the wisdom and the common sense of the people that do the work, and then actually, you've got to measure that well. But also, how do you then share that kind of progress with the people? So then you can start to use some of your lean tools, your visual management boards and your huddles and your problem solving, and actually, recognizing the effort that people are putting in as well. So very much a kind of a top-down kind of structure, but a bottom-up kind of, groundswell of improvement is the way to go forward.
That's awesome, mate. I think about that word that Pascal Dennis coined as you talk about that catch ball, like don't lock the plan away, get feedback and input and adaptation from the front line and all levels of the business. And then once you get that, set up the system so that you can actually then everyone can measure, track progress visually, do root cause on their biggest challenges. And I love that final bit on recognition. I remember sitting at a pub with you many years ago, Richard, and you talking about the importance of recognition and how simple that can be to go forward with. Richard, do you mind if we go back just for a second to the top line plan and getting feedback going to the Gemba? How have you seen that done, mate? Like what have you seen? Have you seen a good event where a leadership team has taken the draft strategy to the front line and really listened well? What are some of the behaviors you saw them exude?
Yeah, I mean, you remember Louis Sylvester? We've worked with Louis over the years, and he was working at Auckland Council. I can name them. And what he did was he had a business plan, but it was kind of unfinished, and he took it on a bit of a roadshow. So, and this was the first time this had ever happened. So they had like a centre manager, and I'm going to say there were 20 of them in Auckland that he had to go around. So it probably took him best part of a couple of months. But he went out there and workshopped and did the whole, this is what I'm thinking. They then gave their ideas. And then they formed that up into actually what the battle plan was going to be. Because actually they were trying to do originally one size fits all. But actually Auckland's very different. It's very diverse. Culturally and the kind of the people that live in the different suburbs and so on. So they came up with very different types of strategies according to what actually suited their local community. So that actually resulted in massive kind of thumbs up from all the local elected bodies as well, because I always used to say the bloody council, all they do is just roll the same thing out every year. So very, very successful. And some really good leadership came out of that as well. So some people stepped up, and it was the first chance they had actually to have a voice in terms of what was done in their own kind of backyard.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I remember seeing that, the plan too, Richard. It was highly visual, wasn't it? Like, there was very few words on that plan. It was more of a visual representation that each team put together.
Yeah, and they all ran the VMBs, and they all had a lot of sort of the whole team getting together and working on new ideas and so on. So those were the great days back sort of 10 years ago now, I guess.
Right, it's awesome. Richard, when it comes to then the team's got their plan or their aspirations that connects to the top level plan, and they've also had a chance to have a crack at that top level plan and provides often, like you said, some amazing insights because they know so much. You've got these plans in place and aligned goals. What's some tips on setting up a good visual management board then, would you say, where it comes to then at the different levels of the business, setting up this visual representation of the plan and measures so you can actually then track progress and improvements and challenges?
I guess well, I've done a little bit around, what works well in terms of setting up the VMB, and essentially it has to be linked to strategy. So, if you have, your vision and value right at the top. So, Countdown's one was to make Kiwis' lives a little better every day. So starting with that as, okay, well, that's what we're here for. And then saying, okay, well, what is it that we need to do as a business? And they're going to have sales and stock loss and what have you, voice of the customer stuff. We'll then say, okay, well, now we've got, okay, here's the kind of rules, but then let's actually get the local kind of content involved. So to make it personal. And they coined a phrase, freedom in a framework. Well, this is what we want, but actually you go away and you come up with a way that you can measure this, or maybe you can solve some of these issues, or maybe put some processes in, or potentially how you can improve what comes from head office. So really reminding people every day of I guess the purpose and what the plan is, and then say, right, okay, well, every day we're going to talk about this. So if it's not working, what are we going to do differently? So actually making certain that it's refreshed on a daily basis, as well as the other operational benefits of getting the team together for that short 10-minute huddle, as part of the daily rhythm of the operation.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I can see how that connection to purpose and connection to strategy would make the board, the visual management board and the huddle so much more meaningful to team members because I guess they can really then start to see that they're making a difference. Like what the work they do makes a dramatic difference.
Yeah, I mean, back to the words on the wall. I mean, somebody in marketing or maybe somebody in HR has developed this program. We've got our vision, our values, but nobody in the shop floor knows what's going on. You know, it might be just a poster. You can't run your business through putting up posters
They become invisible very quickly.
very
Um,
quickly.
Richard, why is it important? You mentioned visual management boards, but also then root cause analysis. Why is it important to build some capability on root cause analysis at every level of the business as part of this, not just skip that part?
I think the big issue is that if you aren't able to hit the performance that you want, say there's some constant issues that are stopping you. Just say, I don't know, breakdowns. Oh no, we couldn't make the plan because we had too many breakdowns, right? So actually, if you teach people root cause analysis and something simple like the five whys, is you can say, okay, then, well, let's do the five whys on, why we get so many, breakdowns, or maybe the 16 losses, which comes from TPM. So if you start to give them methods to solve problems that they can then implement, then they go, well, actually, I can't make a difference because before I just didn't know where to start. So it's giving people something that they can do to actually change, I guess, the operation or change the state of operations for the better.
I really like that, mate. It sounds to me that like once you've got this strategy and cultural plan in place, you've got that connection to it, you've helped teams form up their visual management board and teams are then able to start to run their own plan and their own path forward. That's when some of the relevant tools come into play, I'm guessing. Like you mentioned, it could be root cause analysis, could be TPM because it's a very machine intensive environment. Yeah, it's a great thing. But what do you see happen in teams where they're trying to deploy lean, but they don't have a connection to strategy and culture, or even a visual management board, but they're trying to deploy root cause analysis, TPM? What do you see happen?
Yeah, I'm not sure who said it, but you start with a why. So why are we doing this? So why are we doing 5S? Because I tidy up every Friday. That course we did on the five whys, I didn't really understand how I could implement that in my backyard. It didn't really apply to me. So if you're saying to people, these are some of the things we want to do, and these are some of the issues, I always ask people, what are the top three issues that are affecting your business? And quite often I don't get an answer. So it's knowing what the issues are that are affecting performance and then saying, well, these are the reasons why, it's a new product that we're trying to launch, or we're trying to, and I've gone through this during the COVID years, we're trying to actually replace a furnace and put a new one in. And, we need to shut this team down and open this team up, a lot of kind of change. So the idea is it helps you, I guess, move through that change a little bit more elegantly and actually more, collaboration. People understand the why, right? So it's understanding why we're doing this because there's an awful lot of change out there, and people need to be equipped with some of those tools and techniques.
It's neat. I can really see that it would build that greater motivation and understanding by doing that. Richard, when we met years ago, you were talking to me about recognition cards and simple recognition techniques to then support this. Why is recognition important as part of this, strategy and culture deployment and then getting execution going through huddles and visual management at all levels? Why is recognition so critical? And how can you go about it?
I'm not a psychologist, but I've heard of things like Maslow and Maslow's triangle, and somewhere in that triangle, people want to get a bit of esteem for themselves, So I've seen this probably over the last 30 years where people really respond to genuine recognition, not like the employee of the month kind of thing at McDonald's, but the idea being is that, okay, well, there's something that you've done that actually I really value, and that is something that could be as a a co-worker. You helped me, you stayed late, or I had to finish this off, and you showed me what to do, and you spent time with my stock take. So that general peer-to-peer kind of thank you very much. I really, I'm less stressed about my life because you helped me. And the company stuff is kind of nice to know, but that whole peer-to-peer, the team working thing, and where I saw it first was in Japan. I was on one of my study tours, lean study tours, and I was in the supermarket group, and they owned all the malls, and they just happened to own a few supermarkets, and they're making a presentation on their thank you cards. So they have thank you cards between employees, and they have them whereby you can thank somebody for the work that they've done, but also you can also get customer thanks as well, right? So they only measure two things, which is the number of cards received per person and the number of cards given per person. And the top people in each of the malls went to a big conference in Tokyo at the end of the year, right? So they had 500,000 employees. Yeah, and they all have the same kind of system whereby they did the little thank you cards. It's part of their culture as well, but they had you can see it was really there's a lot of improvement going on and a lot of kind of mutual respect in between the different employees. So very high in terms of employee satisfaction as well.
Yeah, well, Richard, that tip you gave me many years ago at that, I guess we thought it was a pub in Sydney, I can't remember.
Probably.
As I saw it help at McLean Farms yesterday, where I am out at Pittsworth at the moment. So I was, they've implemented thank you cards linked to their values and their behaviors. And I was out of the frontline huddle out in the rearing area for chickens. And I saw an IT team member, a technology IT department team member come out to the huddle. I saw him sit there and listen intently to them and their huddle. I saw him ask very curiously, what are your challenges right now, your priorities? How can I help? What connects to IT? What does IT need to do for you right now? And I saw him writing notes furiously. And then I saw that he took it back to his huddle at his IT department. And so I went and got the card that links to Strive for Excellence, one of their values. And I wrote up a thank you card for Roland and handed it to him and just explained to him why I was giving that to him and how he led the company's values and behaviors so well. And it's just an impressive system, mate. But you can easily not do it. Or you can easily think it's just fluffy stuff, can't you?
Oh yeah, I mean, making light of it or trying to force feed people it. I've done it a few times. I've just said, look, I show the Japanese example. I've got a few of the Japanese cards and how they link to their values on the back. And it's up to you. And a few people, I'm talking a few, have picked it up and they've had some pretty amazing results.
Yeah.
But the one company did measure its voice of the team, employee satisfaction very well, and you could see there's a lot of things going on, but yeah, they reckon that was one of the biggest things that they actually had that drove that culture.
I think I'm seeing the same, Richard, when it's done well. I'm sure there's cases where it can be done poorly, but I've seen a lot of teams now mounting them on their huddle boards, and it becomes like this wall of pride around the great things they're doing too. And yeah, I've seen great results. So thank you, Richard. Thank you. You're helping companies across the ditch without even probably knowing about it, mate. So thank you.
Okay, mate. Well, that's
Hey,
good.
yeah. So Richard, we spoke about leaders, first of all, getting input from frontline team members on strategy even before they lock strategy away and allowing team members to have that input. And then helping team members then set up their visual boards and their system connected, their plan, make it visual on the wall and start to track their progress and to see that constant connection to purpose and direction and strategy and culture. We talked about the power of having it as visual and the visual management board. We talked about root cause analysis and how it comes in then, but other tools. What are the relevant tools to help them get their strategy and improve their culture? We spoke about recognition and the power of that thank you or recognition card, which you and I have both seen. What results have you seen come out of all this, mate? Across many of the companies you work with, what are some of the results? You mentioned one already around engagement. What sort of results do you see when companies do this well?
Yeah, I mean, I can't name names. I signed pieces of paper to say that I
Yeah.
shouldn't mention the names, right? But I mean, I know, um, I mean, it is generally some of the larger companies I work with, but you're talking about improvement in sales, improvement in the level of, however you want to call it, the level of rejects or the scrap cost, the rework costs. You're looking at attrition in terms of the turnover rate, in terms of people leaving the company. You're talking, dramatic, so in the 20s and the 30% reductions, So all the good stuff that you're looking for, but again, it's not a thing that you get overnight. It's a thing that kind of develops with time. And it's very kind of, it's not, it's very people centric, but it's to remember that, for instance, there was one instance whereby one of the plants I was working with were doing so well and they were doing, scrap had gone down and turnover had gone down and profit was going up and they were winning more sales. It was fantastic feedback from their customers. And then they changed the plant manager. And they didn't really vet him before they employed him. And when he came in, he was probably the anti-lean guy. And actually, for about 6 months, everything just went south, So he didn't actually hang around. But it just shows you've got to be careful because he's put a lot of effort getting things heading in the right direction. And unless you do the people side well and your leadership piece really well, you could lose it all literally overnight.
Mm,
That's how it goes.
I've seen it too, Richard. It's where myself personally, I believe the people system, particularly people development and succession planning, is so critical. Because the wrong people development or no people development system, no leader development system, poor succession planning, you could destroy everything you've done
Yeah, I've
so
seen it go
fast.
literally 2 months. Almost, you wouldn't even know. Going from literally the best they've ever performed to as they were. So it can be destroyed pretty quickly.
Yeah. One thing, I had a chat to Chris Butterworth the other week, and Chris was mentioning to me, Brad, if you can get a company to 4 or 5 in maturity, so Shingo maturity, 4 or 5, he said to me that is less hard to happen because you've got everyone leading the business and it's less likely. And that was a real aha moment for me because I don't know personally that I've seen a company at 4 or 5 yet in Australia. I think maybe people at 3 heading for 4. And I've seen some of those people at a level of 3 maturity to 4 go backward, mainly
Yeah.
through changes in poor CEO changes, right? So this was
Yes.
a very powerful change. So I didn't see them go backward with some incorrect changes at middle management or some that didn't work so well. They're able to correct those people or find them the right role real quick. But I saw it get hammered with the CEO. Yeah, but Chris was like, Brad, you get him to 4 5, and I've seen it around the world that it won't happen. Have you got any thoughts on that? Have you seen it in New Zealand? I just haven't seen it here in Australia yet.
I'd say the maturity in New Zealand was a little, I mean, don't want to do the Australia New Zealand thing, but yeah, we're a bit behind Australia. And you do get a lot of kind of people that start well and then they change the CEO and then they go a different direction. And I think we're probably suffering a bit right now. So people potentially are just focusing on the real basics. And there's been a lot of where I live, there's been a few companies that are just packing up their bags and moving everything to Auckland. So I think that there's still a bit of a hangover from COVID, and there's still some people that are reacting to okay, well, we just need to cut costs. We just need to sort of focus on the basics. So our maturity, I don't think there's many that I would say we're at a 3 even.
Yeah, and it's often when they're at that lower maturity, they're just obsessive about the P&L or the balance sheet rather than what's going to get us the P&L or balance sheet.
Correct.
So, which is such a simple concept to think about. Like, profit doesn't happen by magic. Profit doesn't happen by taking a red pen to a few things. It can do it short term, but it won't do it long term. It's like, but you think of what are all the leading factors that actually create a company that's going to be sustainably profit. It's what you and I have spoken about in this episode. And I guess I know you share the passion. It's like, how can we help more companies get like that in Australia and New Zealand in particular, because it'll help our economy. It'll help people have a better day at work. It'll help our environment. There's no downside, is there?
Well, as you know, everything's cyclical. Again, I remember being in an audience in Japan with a company that had been in business for 450 years, and we were I think it was the big GFC. It was 2008. I remember somebody saying, "Well, how are you coping with the big downturn?" And there was a bit of a conversation in Japanese, and they turned around and said, "Which one? Was it the one in 1900 or was it the one in 1750? Because we've been here for 450 years. You're going to see this cyclical kind of boom and bust. And so I guess, give it 5 years and we'll be probably in boom again.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. Richard, out of all this, like if you had a CEO or a senior leader or someone who's getting into continuous improvement, business improvement with you in an elevator for 2 minutes, what would be an enterprise excellence 2 minute tip you'd give them when you say, guys, just do this, focus here? What would you say around this topic?
I think because when I say about, well, deploying the strategy well, the first question is actually, do you have a robust strategy? And is it something that you have then, cascaded down at all levels? So if I went out to the shop floor and grabbed somebody, could they actually articulate to me exactly what the plan is for this business? So really is about, well, a lot of CEOs are under pressure to deliver on a plan. Well, are you sharing that plan effectively, and are you getting all hands to the wheel?
Yeah, that's a great tip because that's the ultimate outcome we're developing here, isn't it? With strategy and culture deployment and execution. Richard, what's been a recent insight for you in the recent times? Something new you've learned?
I mean, I've already talked about reward and recognition. So it was, something that 'cause I might probably would have trained, I don't know, 5,000 people over the years during my time at the Kaizen Institute and SA Partners. And I would get people writing to me saying, "Look, I did your course. Would you mind writing me a letter to say that you did the course?" And anyway, so this whole thing around people getting, recognition or wanting to have, the whole thing about esteem for themselves um, is a big thing, and then getting that from others as well, so the whole recognition from other people, from their peers. So it's really understanding that, and it's not just about, hey, let's do blanket training on lean, but understanding what it is that people need as part of their career development experiences, to actually, get themselves where they want to be, and with my 42 years of experience, I've met people early on. A young fellow worked for me, and he was working in a warehouse back in my Orica days. And he ended up, I think he's general manager or something in Maersk shipping lines now in Australia. You get these people that are just going to end up not ruling the world, but they're going to help us manage, and be good leaders in the future. So it's really about recognizing that you get some good people that can actually help you or help the company achieve what their goals are.
Yeah, I love it. Every CEO typically has started at the front line somewhere in this world, and it's too true. It's too true. I see it all the time myself, Richard. I love it. Richard, I really appreciate you sharing knowledge, those 40 plus years of knowledge and expertise to help us create that better future. And it's been such a great conversation because we've really unpacked the purpose and principles of it all, which I've really enjoyed. How can people reach out to you, Richard, if they want to ask questions, get help, get support, learn more?
Well, a couple of options. I do have a website, so richardsteele.co.nz. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. I think everything is on LinkedIn nowadays. And I will be joining you and the team with the Enterprise Excellence Network as well. So I understand there's a few people over here in New Zealand that are crying out for a bit of support. So through that avenue as well.
Yeah, it's great, everyone. You'll be able to, in the coming days, you'll be able to find Richard on the Enterprise Excellence Group website, and from there, all his contact details, and get that help either directly in New Zealand or call Richard in across the ditches, whichever one, across to America, across to Australia. But nowadays, we can jump on Zoom, can't we? So we can get we can get help in via Teams or Zoom from anyone. So, Richard, I have learnt from this conversation, and I have learnt from you in the past, and I really appreciate it, mate. Thanks for everything you have done and will continue to do forward to help us create a better future.
Yeah, you're welcome. And like I said, it's nice to work with you again. It's been a few years. And Chris, of course, and Alex. So it's like old times for me. So more than happy to share my knowledge, and looking forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks, Richard. Talk soon.
Thanks.
What a great episode. Remember, you can go to the enterpriseexcellencegroup.com.au website to find Richard's details, but also go to the resources section where there are so many templates for deploying strategy, for around visual management boards, even the recognition cards that you can get hold of under resources. There were two key takeaways for me from this episode. The first was around Richard's discussion of taking that top line plan and curiously and in a humble way presenting it to Frontline and getting their input, and from that input, making changes. I love the comment Richard made that some of the best ideas and changes have actually come from the front line, from what he's seen. The other key takeaway for me was all around recognition. I've seen it play out, and simple concepts like the thank you card or shout out card, and it being used in a way to connect to strategy, connect to values and behaviours, and used in that really impromptu way to be able to recognise people for really living your culture or achieving great strategic outcomes, and doing it in the right way to really recognise effectively. I've seen teams then use those recognition cards as part of their huddle, and all sorts of great initiatives to make it even more powerful. It creates motivation, it creates energy, creates respect. Really powerful system. Thank you again, Richard, for your time and knowledge. Really appreciate you helping us create a better future. Bye for now.